According to survivors, the bite itself may not be the worst part of a black mamba attack, because the truly terrifying part can begin minutes later. What they describe is not always a giant burst of pain, but a step-by-step loss of control while the mind stays awake. Before we go further, the phrase "world's deadliest snake needs care," because that label changes depending on what deadliest actually means. If you mean the most toxic venom in lab terms, people often mention the inland taipan instead of the black mamba. If you mean the snake linked to the most human deaths, some experts point to species like the saw-scaled viper. But if you mean fast-acting neurotoxic venom, extreme danger without treatment, and a reputation built on real medical emergencies, the black mamba belongs in that conversation. This snake lives in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and its name does not come from black skin on the outside. The name comes from the dark, inky inside of its mouth, which it can show when it feels threatened. It is long, fast, mostly ground-living, and armed with venom that attacks the body's nerve to muscle signals. According to survivors and case reports, the first shock is sometimes how ordinary the bite can feel for a few moments. Some people report a sharp puncture pain, quick and clear, like two hard needles entering the skin at once. Others describe something smaller at first, almost too small for what is about to happen inside the rest of the body. That matters because many people expect a deadly snake bite to feel like instant unbearable agony centered in the wound. The black mamba often frightens people in a different way, because the worst part may be the body's strange changes afterward. According to survivors, the first minutes can feel confusing before they feel catastrophic, and that confusion makes the fear even worse. A person may first notice pins and needles at the bite site, a tingling that feels wrong almost immediately. Then the feeling can spread into the lips or mouth, as if the face itself is starting to buzz. Several reports mention a metallic or bitter taste appearing suddenly, even though nothing new entered the person's mouth. That detail shows up again and again in black mamba stories, so it should be treated as reported, not guaranteed. Some survivors describe the taste as the moment the event becomes real, because their whole body suddenly feels different from normal. Then dizziness can begin, and with it comes sweating, a rush of heat, and a feeling of deep internal alarm. Part of that alarm is fear, but part of it may be the body's direct reaction to venom moving through the system. According to survivor accounts, this stage can feel like the body is sending one clear message: something is terribly wrong. That is when the story often stops feeling like an injury and starts feeling like a takeover from the inside. The black mamba's signature pattern is progressive neurological failure, which means body control starts slipping away piece by piece. One of the earliest visible signs can be drooping eyelids, called ptosis, where the eyes stop obeying as they should. A survivor may still be fully aware, but the eyelids begin to sag as if sleep is forcing them shut. Vision can blur next, or split into double vision, turning distance and movement into something unstable and hard to trust. Speech may become thick or slurred, not because the person forgot words, but because the muscles stop shaping them cleanly. Swallowing can also become difficult, and that small change carries huge fear because the throat no longer feels dependable. Some people report twitching or cramping, little warning signs that the body's muscle system is losing smooth control. Others describe something even stranger, where the arms or legs still exist but feel less connected to intention. According to survivors, that disconnect can be the most haunting part, because the mind stays present while the body starts failing. This is where the black mamba becomes different from the movie version people often imagine in their heads. The danger is not always giant local damage at the bite itself, with massive tissue destruction right where the fangs went in. Black mamba venom is feared more for what it does across the whole body than for what it does locally. The venom contains dendrotoxins and other neurotoxins that disrupt the messages traveling between nerves and muscles. In simple words, the brain may still send the order, but the body begins failing to carry that order out. That is why the experience can feel less like being wounded and more like being unplugged while still fully conscious. A person may try to blink, speak, swallow, or steady their breathing and feel each task becoming less automatic. According to case reports, symptoms can begin within minutes, though in some cases the clear pattern takes longer to show. The exact timing depends on several things, including where the bite happened, how much venom entered, and the victim's size. A bite to one place is not the same as a bite somewhere else, and venom dose matters enormously. That is also why stories claiming every victim dies in 20 minutes should be treated as exaggerations, not reliable rules. Black mamba envenomation can deteriorate frighteningly fast, but rigid timelines flatten a medical emergency into a myth. Some bites may involve less venom, and dry bites, where little or no venom enters, can happen in some snake bites. But no one should ever assume a black mamba bite is dry, because that mistake can cost a person their life. The most feared progression is when the muscles of breathing begin to weaken and the chest no longer feels trustworthy. Survivors describe chest tightness, a sense of air hunger, and the awful feeling that breathing is no longer automatic. That phrase, air hunger, matters because it captures the terror of wanting a full breath and not getting one. At that stage, the person may still understand everything happening around them, which can make the fear even more intense. According to survivors, the mind can stay clear enough to realize that the throat, chest, and lungs are becoming uncertain. That is why Black Mamba stories are so disturbing, even when they are told in calm medical language years later. The horror often comes from the order of the symptoms. First the tingling, then the taste, then the eyes, then the throat. Then speech begins to fail, swallowing becomes risky, the limbs feel less reliable, and breathing becomes the center of fear. That sequence is not identical in every case, but it appears often enough in reports to form a chilling pattern. To understand why, picture the body as a chain of signals moving from nerves into muscles every second you are alive. The black mamba's venom interferes with that chain, so actions that normally happen without thought start breaking down one by one. The bite site may not look as dramatic as people expect from a deadly snake, and that can fool witnesses. Because the venom's most dangerous work is systemic, the real emergency may be building even while the wound looks deceptively modest. This difference matters in the first minutes because panic often pushes people to do the exact wrong things. Running is one of those wrong things, because hard movement can help spread venom faster through the body. According to field medicine guidance, the person should be kept still, and the bitten limb should be immobilized if appropriate. The goal is not to beat the venom with heroics, but to slow the body's movement and get urgent medical help. Old myths are dangerous here, especially the idea of cutting the wound or trying to suck the venom out. Those actions do not solve the real problem and can make the situation worse instead of better. Dangerous tourniquets belong in that same myth pile, because they can cause harm without fixing the systemic danger. The correct move is urgent transport, minimal movement, and fast access to people who can manage the airway and give antivenom. In the hospital, antivenom is central, but another life-saving tool may matter just as much in severe cases. If breathing begins to fail, oxygen, airway support, intubation, and mechanical ventilation can keep a person alive long enough. That point matters because survival is not only about stopping venom, but also about buying time while the body is supported. Modern care changes the story in a major way because a black mamba bite is no longer the same sentence it once was. Historically, serious untreated bites had a terrifying reputation for good reason, but treatment can completely change the outcome. That is why survivor testimony exists at all, because some people reached antivenom and critical care in time. Still, survival does not mean the experience was simple, clean, or easy to leave behind mentally. Long after the venom crisis ends, some survivors report weakness, anxiety, and trauma tied to the memory of the event. They may remember the metallic taste, the drooping eyelids, the slurred words, or the exact second breathing stopped feeling safe. Those details stay vivid because the experience attacks something very basic: trust in your own body. According to survivors, the body does not just hurt during a black mamba bite. It becomes strange, unreliable, and frighteningly unfamiliar. Now, we should separate another famous myth from reality, because black mambas are often described as snakes that chase humans. The better reading is less dramatic, but still important. They usually try to escape rather than hunt people down. They can seem to pursue a person when their chosen escape path lines up with that person's movement. In panic, that can look exactly like a chase, even when the snake is trying to reach safety. This matters because folklore often grows faster than evidence, and black mambas have collected a huge amount of folklore. They are formidable snakes, but the truth is already frightening enough without adding fake rules and movie scenes. Another myth says the bite always brings instant collapse, yet the real pattern is often fast, but more stepwise than that. A person may have minutes to notice things changing, and those minutes can feel endless because each symptom adds new dread. The fear is not only pain, it is the growing proof that blinking, talking, swallowing, and breathing are no longer guaranteed. That is why the bite itself may not be the worst part, according to the accounts that keepers are facing. The strike can be one sharp moment, but the aftermath can feel like the body is being taken apart function by function. If we tell the story in one careful first-person line based on survivor descriptions, It sounds something like this. I feel the puncture, then the tingling, then the bitter metal taste, then my eyes and throat stop feeling fully mine. I am still awake enough to know what is happening, and that may be the most terrifying detail of all. The black mamba remains one of the most feared snakes on Earth because its venom turns a hidden body process into a conscious nightmare. It shows how deadly danger does not always arrive as huge visible damage, but sometimes as quiet loss of control. So the real lesson from survivor testimony is not just that the snake is dangerous, but how it is dangerous. It is dangerous because the body can fail from the inside while the person remains present enough to feel every step. Case reports also show why the bite site can mislead people, because the outside wound may look smaller than the danger building inside the nervous system. That gap between local pain and whole body danger can waste precious time when the victim should already be moving toward emergency care. According to field accounts, some people remember the first minutes as confusing rather than purely painful, and that confusion can delay the right response. A victim may think the bite does not hurt enough to be deadly, even while neurotoxic venom is already changing how nerves talk to muscles. The black mamba's reputation also grew in a time when untreated cases often ended far worse than they do in hospitals today. Modern care changes the story because antivenom can neutralize venom while oxygen, intubation, and ventilators keep breathing going long enough to survive. That is why the real race after a serious bite is not to outrun the snake, but to outrun the venom with transport and treatment. Survivor accounts also remind us that every minute of calm matters, because panic, running, and needless movement can help venom spread faster. Even the myth about chasing hides a lesson, because fear can make an escaping animal look like one that is deliberately pursuing a person. Black mambas are dangerous enough without extra stories that make the science harder to see clearly. When many accounts repeat the same sequence of strange taste, weakness, eye changes, throat trouble, and breathing fear, the pattern becomes hard to dismiss. That repeated pattern is why black mamba survivors often describe the experience almost like a countdown happening inside the body. The science and the stories meet in the same place. The venom interrupts control, and the victim can feel each lost function arriving in order. If you want another real-world story where nature becomes far stranger than the myths people tell about it, watch my next video.